It's the morning after the night before, and I don't know about you, but I feel pretty calm and positive about the 1-0 defeat to Manchester City last night. I know a lot of people were very angry about Ange's team selection and the first half performance, but for me now, I think we have to face some facts. The league is not our priority, and that will show not only in the sides that Big Ange picks, but also potentially in a drop-off in work rate when playing games that aren't in the Europa League, even if just by a few percentage points. And I, for one, am here for those choices being made. If we are the club that prioritise the Europa League most and want it the baddest, it will give us our best chance of lifting it and turning a horror show of a season into our best since 1984. I'll be discussing all that as well as some new transfer links and the rest of the fallout from last night's game. So keep tuned to today's Daily Tottenham Hotspur news with me, Barnaby Slater. Guys, thank you so much for watching and for listening. If you're on YouTube, please do press that like button. Please do press subscribe if you want daily, usually live, Tottenham Hotspur news and transfer stories. I tried to do the live show today at 12:30 p.m, but there was a crackling microphone, so I'm going to record it here and then get that sorted before the next live episode. Also, for any of you who aren't subscribers, I'm also a stand-up comedian, and I've just started releasing daily stand-up clips on YouTube Shorts as well. So if you like stand-up, give me a subscribe for that reason as well. But let's get started with some of those transfer links. And the first one is with a player who has been on our list for a long time, but also on the list of some of the biggest clubs in the land. That is Everton's 22-year-old centre-back, Jarrad Branthwaite. Currently linked not only with Spurs, but also Manchester United and Liverpool. Hard to see him doing a move across Merseyside, though. That would be a pretty bad one, I think, for his ability to have a happy life living around Liverpool. But according to all reports, Tottenham are seriously going to go for Branthwaite this summer. Perhaps they've moved from Mark Guéhi on to Branthwaite. He is definitely in the mould of the young, exciting talent that we are looking to bring to the club. If you take this season and even last night's game as an example, how good were Lucas Bergvall and Archie Gray? And Archie Gray playing out of position. He's played something like 19 out of the last 20 Premier League games at centre-half when he's never played centre-back before. He's just played at right-back for Leeds and in central midfield, which is his chosen position. And we've got an absolute star on our hands. And Lucas Bergvall now starting to take games by the scruff of the neck in central midfield. He's got in now ahead of the team on merit, ahead of Bissouma, ahead of Pat Matasar. And him and Bentancur are starting to form a good partnership in there, although I would say, caveat, Tottenham still far too wide open in the middle of midfield. It only takes any opposition team one or two half-decent passes to really find huge amounts of space in central midfield. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see about Jarrad Branthwaite. Over the years, certainly in the last 5 years or so, Everton have needed to sell one of their best players all the time. They have, of course, had a buyout since then. They've been bought by the company who also own Roma. So maybe it won't be quite as desperately necessary. But I would imagine they're probably running pretty tight to profit and sustainability rules. And maybe they will need to offload someone, in which case Spurs will be in the bid and in the hunt for Jarrad Branthwaite. Now, I'm trying to put myself in Jarrad Branthwaite's shoes. Obviously, if Liverpool come in for him, he'd probably want to move there on a sporting level, because maybe Virgil van Dijk won't be there. They'll be looking to kind of certainly replace him. If not for this summer, if he does sign a kind of short-term extension, they'll be looking to replace him in the long term, and Branthwaite might see himself as a possible replacement for him. Manchester United, of course, are in disarray, but they always have the lure of being Manchester United, so I'm sure he'd be pretty interested in that. They have Martinez, who's obviously out injured once again. They've got Harry Maguire, who's doing okay in a 3 at the back under Ruben Amorim. But Branthwaite might see that as a potential move he'd want to do, except Manchester United over the past 5-10 years really have been the graveyard of big signings. So I'm not sure, that might put some doubt in his mind. But at Spurs, you kind of know if you're a young player at Tottenham under Ange Postecoglou that you're going to get a run in the team. You're going to get a chance. And Tottenham really do need to bring together a big squad next season, because we know in the nearly 2 years we've had with Ange Postecoglou so far, injuries are going to happen, regular muscle injuries. So could Branthwaite come and basically replace maybe Ben Davies? Some stories that Ben Davies is interesting. Leeds, as his contract draws towards an end, and the 10 years that he's had at Spurs looking like they're going to come to an end. So maybe one more centre-back. It does seem like we're going for one after all. We did go for that kind of £70 million bid for Gay at the end of the transfer window, although obviously some people doubt whether that was a real bid or just a bid deemed to be put in so that Daniel Levy could show that he's willing to spend money. Who knows? Anyway, some more transfer news. According to Tottenham, former Tottenham scout Mick Brown, Spurs could well be preparing to make an offer for Southampton's Tyler Dibling this summer. They were fishing around Dibling in January. There were reports that a bid had been put in with a mind to maybe Dibling staying on loan at Southampton, but I don't think Tottenham at that point in January could be seen to be doing a deal like that because we had so many injuries and we needed players through the door. So it would not surprise me at all, or Mick Brown by the sound of it, if Dibling does come to Spurs in the summer. He's 19 years old now. Brown said the following about him: I think an offer of around £25 million would be enough to get that done. I can see him making the move to Tottenham because they're aiming to buy that sort of player. I imagine Spurs will be preparing to make an offer for him at the end of the season. I think if it's a certainty that he will leave Southampton, I can't see him staying there if there are offers coming in for him. Just one kind of little caveat to talk about with Tyler Dibling. He did actually get a move earlier in his career to Chelsea. And he found himself really homesick. He was obviously a kid because he's only 19 now, so he was a bit younger. But that is something to take into account. There are some players who just don't really love moving away from home. And if Tyler Dibling, hasn't kind of evolved, I guess, in terms of his maturity since then Spurs don't want to be paying kind of 25, 30, 35 million pounds for a player who then straight away doesn't find life comfortable. On the flip side of that, though, obviously having such a young team who've all kind of moved to Spurs at once, they do seem to have a good rapport amongst them. Even some of the social media clips I've seen from Matthias Tell in the short time that he's been at Spurs, it shows that these young kids are kind of hanging out together and really trying to grow something and bonding at Spurs. So that could be something that helps Tyler Dibling and other players of his ilk if indeed they do join Tottenham. Now let's get into some of those quotes from after the Tottenham Hotspur 0 Manchester City 1 game last night. As I said in the opening, I didn't feel too bad about it at all. I wasn't unhappy with Ange's team selection. I like that we're kind of wrapping our players in cotton wool and prioritising the Europa League, but it's subjective and not everybody agrees, and that's fine too. Ange was asked, does that positive second half mean that you should have got something from the game? He said this: yeah, I think so. First half, we were just a little bit too eager to get forward with the ball. I thought we were really wasteful, and when you're like that against City, it allows them to get into a rhythm of their game. They can pick you off at different times, and we just didn't handle that part of the game well. They scored and had a couple of good chances to get further ahead. I certainly felt second half we dominated the game and territory. We were pretty relentless, much better with the ball and a lot calmer, but just missing a goal and ultimately fell short. I think what he's saying about the first half is absolutely true. So many occasions where, even from the kind of back four, we were trying to play these straight balls over the top for Brennan Johnson to run onto or for Tell to run onto. And they were just far too straight and they were zipping off the surface and going straight through to Edison every time. And as a result, we were not getting any control of the game. We weren't getting any possession. We weren't able to put Manchester City under any sustained pressure. And that stayed the same for probably maybe 55 minutes. And then after about 55 minutes, we finally got a foothold on the game. And then once the subs came on after about 60 minutes, 65 minutes, that is when we really pushed on. And we were kind of unlucky in the second half, although I have to say, I didn't feel strongly at any time like we were likely to get a goal back. It just felt like it would have to be some kind of worldie, and that didn't come. Ange was also asked, does being able to bring Kulusevski, Son, Spence and Sarr off the bench show that we're turning a corner? He said, it's disappointing to lose again, and that is the main feeling. It did look more like us, though, today, at least from my perspective. We were really relentless. We played aggressive football. We took it to a very good opponent. We never tapered off at all. If anything, like you said, bringing the guys on made us stronger towards the end of the game. Disappointing to lose, but I think you see the benefit of us being refreshed and going into a game well prepared. That level of performance in the second half, if we can begin to get consistent with that, then we'll be able to push on. Let me know in the comments, guys, how do you feel now about the reality of what Ange has been saying all season, that it's the injuries that have caused the poor form and the lack of style and the lack of performance on the pitch. Do you agree that now that the injuries have started coming back, and we've seen it in the last 3 games, obviously 2 wins and 1 defeat in the last 3 games, do you see enough on the pitch in games like last night to say, okay, I think Ange is right and we have to put trust in him? Or do you fear that actually there's more to it, and it could well be something that we're not able to kind of turn a corner with properly to win that Europa League and to really... And now we've got to think about it. We're nearly in March. We're looking at only potentially the last 2 months where Ange Postecoglou has to really impress, I think, the board and the fans to realistically keep his job for next year. Because if he doesn't win the Europa League and he finishes in, I don't know, where are we now? We're probably around 13th. But if he finishes in the bottom half, I cannot see Daniel Levy sticking with him realistically based on Levy's past experience. I'm not saying I want him to go. I'll stick to what I've been saying all season. I'd love it to work for Big Ange Postecoglou. My dream is for us to win the Europa League, and then Postecoglou will stay in his job as long as he wants and will push on. But he really does need to use these games now to prove to the club, to the fans, to the players, to everybody that our performances will get better because we have players back from injury. And it's a tough one as well, isn't it? Because at the same time, he needs to show that in the league games, but also, like I said, I'm happy for him to basically not play the likes of Van der Ven, Romero, Solanke in those league games. Even Sonny, I would probably rest in the league game so that he's at his absolute best in the Europa League to go deep in that. So he's got to find a middle ground. It's not going to be easy for him, that's for sure. Ange was also asked about Wilson Odobert's first start since September. He said this: I thought he was great. It was important tonight that him, Destiny and Brennan Johnson got some minutes. Again, it's one thing to get guys back from injury, but we've got to get them up to speed as quickly as we possibly can. You could see Wilson hasn't played for a while, but you could also see the quality that he has. I think he grew into the game in the second half. I thought he was a big catalyst at the beginning of the second half when he was running at the opposition. He's an exciting player, and if we can manage him through this period and get him to a really decent level of fitness, I'm sure he will help us finish the season strong. I agree with all of that. What's interesting about Wilson Odobert, if you compare him to Brennan Johnson, right? And Brennan Johnson obviously gets a lot of stick for kind of not being that almost present, not being able to see what he does during the game except for getting in at the back post or getting good crosses in across the box, or those times where he's finishing into the bottom left-hand corner from the inside right position. With Odobert, you can see the difference between Odobert and Johnson, and not always in a positive way. Odobert is more direct in terms of acceleration, pace, and beating a man from close up. That's what he's got that's a positive. But we've seen twice now this season, and bear in mind, Odobert's hardly played any minutes. I remember once before he got injured, and then once last night, where Odobert has got into that back post position. A cross has come perfectly across the box, and in at the back post, he just hasn't timed his run perfectly to get the finish. And last night, he hit it with his left foot, didn't he, wide from the back post with the goal gaping. He did something very similar at the beginning of the season, I remember. I can't quite recall against who. But Brennan Johnson is absolutely elite at that, and it is a skill that should not be looked down on, because you have to time the run, you have to get your legs sorted out, and you have to finish. And when Odobert is able to add that to his game, that is when he will be a genuine full-term threat in terms of his ability on the ball, his ability to make sure that defenders are so worried about him that they have to kind of double up on him, and that allows space elsewhere. And then when he adds that finishing at the back post to his game, as well as his ability to cut in on his right foot and take shots from the left-hand side as well, that is when Spurs will see the full benefits of it. Ange was also asked, with Son, Kulusevski and Spence, was it a case of it being their turn and others needing the minutes? And said this: no, it wasn't their turn, but like I said, it's just, there's no point having a squad, and I can't be sitting here bemoaning not having a squad and then not use it. I think that would be highly hypocritical of me, but we needed Destiny, Brennan and Wilson to play today and get some minutes. Decky, Sonny and Jed have, played an enormous amount of football. So having them have a little bit of recovery and a breather, I thought was going to be helpful for us. But more importantly, now I've got 3 more players who are getting close to, it's 90 minutes for Brennan. That's the first 90 minutes for quite a while, but getting close to fitness. We're going to have some real options, which we're going to need because we've got Europa and League back to back now, and we need as many bodies available for that as possible. That's true. Wrap the spine in cotton wool and then use everybody else for the Premier League games. It's Bournemouth at home, I believe, next in the Premier League, but we do have a break now for a week before our next game, which is AZ Alkmaar away next Thursday, in the early kickoff as well, 5:30 p.m. I think. A journalist asked this: it might be too simplistic to say that City had Haaland tonight and you didn't have Solanke, but I'm guessing you're really looking forward to getting back in a week or so because he's been a miss. a big miss. And Ange said this, yeah, absolutely, Dom and Rishi. And look, Matthias is working really hard, but we're asking him to do a massive job for us at this level. And he's probably one that did need a rest and probably does need a rest because he's come in and played every game. It'll be good to get Dom back in there. When he was playing for us, he was hard to stop, and you can see the benefit of them having Erling Haaland in their side, so hopefully Dom's not too far away. I said it on the watch-along last night, I'll say it again. The thing that Dominic Solanke brought into our play this season that really changed our ability to keep the ball and recycle play in the last third was his hold-up play, his back-to-goal stuff, his ability to chest it down, keep defenders behind him, bring in other players. We've missed that so much, and Tell is just not that kind of player, and add to that the fact that Tell has not played Premier League football really before, so he's just getting used to the physicality of it, the pace of it. I'm sure Tell has all of the ability to hold the ball up well when it comes to his feet. I know he does. He's got a great touch. You've seen that already. But you have to learn the way that the league works, and that is what we've missed most from Solanke. Solanke is also a great finisher. He also is a great passer, brings people in really well, but it's his hold-up play which we miss so much because we're just not able in that final third to keep the ball there and keep kind of waves upon waves of pressure at the opposition. And that is something that I'm hopeful that when Solanke comes back, he'll be able to add to us. Got to be careful with him because he's had a couple of months out with a knee injury, and we cannot have Solanke get re-injured again. So Tell is going to have to continue to play. We're going to have to drip feed Solanke in some minutes here and there to get him up to full fitness. But if we can keep him fit for the rest of the season, then I think we'll be there or thereabouts with that Europa League because he is such a dominant striker. Really looking forward to getting Solanke back, and Richarlison to a lesser degree, so that we've got options to come off the bench as well. Ange was then also asked about that last action in the game where Sarr headed over the bar. He was asked, did you think Sonny's touch took the ball away from Pap Sarr slightly? Ange said this, it's hard to say. I mean, it happened really quickly, but we had a few of those moments in the second half, where it just flashed across the box, or Ederson's made a save, or they've made a block. You're flattened by the defeat, but in terms of the way we played and the way we went about it, it was much more like the team we want to be, and we've already shown we can do that. So there's a lesson in there for us. The first half, some of it was, I just think, enthusiasm and trying to be too aggressive with the ball. And once we settle down in the second half, if we can take that into games, then I think we'll be able to push on. Ange was also asked then about, at the end, he had a long chat with Pep, and he was asked what they said. He said, no, it was just a couple of managers sharing their thoughts. That's it. Lucas Bergvall then also came out and talked after the game on his thoughts. He said, I think the first half was poor. The gaffer talked to us at halftime about how it was not good enough, and how after the game, he said that's why they won the game, because of our poor performance in the first half. In the second half, we were much better, I think. It was the first half that ruined it for us today, so it's disappointing. Listen, Lucas Bergvall, I thought, had a magnificent game. I love the fact that now you can tell that confidence is streaming through him. He feels like he's one of the first names on the team sheet. He wants the ball. He's coming to get it deep, similar to how Maddison does. And like I said, I think him, Maddison and Bentancur, at the moment, our first choice three in midfield, with Kulusevski on the right. Realistically, and then Brennan Johnson coming on from the bench, and I don't mind that at all. Our starting 11 from last night's narrow defeat was the second youngest we've ever fielded in a Premier League game. This is from the official Spurs website, fielding an 18-year-old, two 19-year-olds, a 20-year-old, and with all of our players being 28 years of age or younger, the average age of the team was just 23 years and 243 days. That's the second youngest side we've ever used in the competition, with the youngest being in September 1992, with a starting 11 of an average age of 23 years and 97 days. So that just shows how this, as Pochettino called it all that time ago, that the painful rebuild is happening, and it's happening with youth in mind. Okay, some stories that came out before the game yesterday. Spurs want Son Heung-min to retire at the club, but we have not been able yet to persuade him to extend his contract, which will have 1 year left in July. That's according to Tom Allnut, so very reputable source. Let me know in the comments how you feel about Sonny. Do you want him to stay at the club for longer than the extra year? It sounds to me like maybe he's got his eyes on something else, on another move, and I've said it all along. If Sonny wants to go somewhere else, then I'm let him leave happily. And if Spurs can get some money for that, ideal as well. But For me, it's up to Sonny. If Sonny wants to finish his career at Spurs, I would love that as well. He's still an excellent player, and if we can manage his minutes and keep him absolutely at 100% fitness all the time, I could still see him having another 15, 20 goal season next season if he is spared having to play every single game. Okay, another story that came out yesterday is this story in Bloomberg that over the past 18 months, investors including US billionaires and private equity funds have all begun discussions to buy a stake in Tottenham, with the end goal being full control of the club. But every time, talks break down over Daniel Levy's high valuation of the club, and because he wants to remain either as a significant investor or in charge of sporting decisions via a lucrative contract. Spurs declined to comment on any sales talks. The future role for Levy is not fundamental to any deal discussions, they say, or according to one person familiar with the situation. Well, it sounds a bit like it might be actually, Daniel, but he probably doesn't want to admit that out in public. Discussions have apparently consistently failed over confusion about who would control the club following any deal, and struggles to navigate the club's ownership structure, the people familiar with the discussions said. Qatari investors QSI are currently not interested in a deal, according to people familiar with the situation, despite having held some talks in 2023. So this story came out yesterday or maybe the night before, and a lot of Spurs fans have got very angry about it, seeing that Daniel Levy is even micromanaging the sale of the club in terms of his needs to stay involved. And obviously there are a lot of people in the Spurs fan base who are just desperate for Daniel Levy to not be involved in any future with the club. I think it's a difficult one. I have seen a graph of Tottenham's ownership structure, and Spurs is owned by about 8 to 10 different companies that ENIC have set up down the years. So you can see also why that would be a confusing one. But I think really my personal feeling is that it's probably the valuation of the club that's the biggest stumbling block, because of the stadium, the fact that we own the stadium, the fact that the stadium brings in so much money in revenue. That means that we are looking to try and get about £3.5–4 billion for the club. No English club has gone for that amount of money. And Tottenham don't win anything on the pitch. So it's not like any investor is going to be like, well, we're winning guaranteed winners. We're buying guaranteed winners. So you can totally see why it's a difficult one. And I can see that difficulty continuing. And to be honest, I don't see ENIC and Daniel Levy selling up anytime soon. I think maybe Daniel Levy would be more predisposed to letting go of the reins if we actually won something and he could take some credit from that. But I think until that happens, I cannot see it. Don't forget how Daniel Levy became front and centre on the pitch at Amsterdam when we won that second leg of the Champions League semi-final. He came onto the pitch with Pochettino in front of the away fans, so he clearly wants the credit for it all. He gets a lot of credit, and rightly so, for the business side of the club, for the stadium, but he wants some credit for some success on the pitch, and I don't think he's going to let go of the reins until he gets that. That's just my thought, though. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching today. Really appreciate it. If you haven't already, please do give this video a like on YouTube. Please do press subscribe if you're not a subscriber for daily Tottenham Hotspur news and transfer talk. And also, like I said, I'm also now posting on YouTube Shorts my stand-up comedy clips as well. So let me know what you think about those. And yeah, I know we lost last night, but I think it's, again, feeling a positive time to be a Spurs fan. I think we could have an exciting end to the season. Come on, you Spurs.